Well, sorry Labour, but you're not going to like this. Let's begin. Now, can anyone remember a little while ago when Liz Truss was in charge and, as everyone says, crashed the economy with her plans for growth, when in truth, the plans weren't too bad, it's just her delivery of the whole thing was, let's just say, a bit pants, eh? And because of that, you had the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, and the IFS, the Institute for Fiscal Studies, and all other people and celebrities out there bashing that completely. Even one, if I remember rightly, Sir Keir Starmer. Well, unfortunately for him, it seems like, according to this article, the shoe is, let's just say, on the other foot, eh? Because the article says that Labour's pledge not to raise working people's taxes is not credible. The IFS says, well, sorry, Keir, you just can't hide it any longer, can you? Because let's face it, all your policies are going to need to be paid for, and unfortunately that just can't be paid from your money tree in your back garden, eh? It also says that the manifesto pledges made by the main parties, in the IFS's view, suffer plausibility problems. The IFS says that the Tories would find cutting £12 billion from welfare spending seriously tough. Well, if anything, I think they'll actually find winning the election seriously tough, or actually even getting over 50 or 60 MPs in Parliament. And Labour's promise not to increase taxes on working people, as I was saying earlier, is one they would struggle to keep. I don't think it's credible to say that you will not have any tax increases that affect any working people, says Paul Johnson, the director of the IFS. And that's not it, because if Labour wins the election, the IFS calculates that spending, investment and unprotected public services would likely be cut by around £22 billion a year by the end of the next Parliament. So is that how they're doing it then? Is our police force, the NHS and any other public service you can think of, is that going to be the collateral that Labour can say that they can get away without increasing tax? Although maybe not, because it continues, and both Labour and Tories appear to be banking on the economy as suddenly booming. The problem is there, isn't it, that at the moment, whilst, yes, inflation is near to where apparently it should be, we're not actually seeing that so much in places that affect our lives, are we? Like credit cards or loans, mortgages, even a trip to the local Tesco, in my opinion. Inflation seems to be going up and down, if anything, in those areas, I reckon. And also, from what I've heard, energy prices will be increasing later on during the year, so that is bound to have an effect on people's pockets. And the article says that those public services are a funding black holes that both parties still refuse to engage with. But they need to, don't they? Because at the end of the day, whichever party gets in, unfortunately, it kind of looks like it's going to be Sir Keir, who, let's face it, with his very wooden personality, could actually come from IKEA. And he's also going to have to deal with people finding this out when the time comes, eh? The government's forecaster, though, the OBR, what do they say? They reckon that the economy will grow by 1.8% a year in the next Parliament. And that forecast is considered modest. The IFS, though, they say that if the next government is lucky and growth comes in at 0.5% a year higher, those spending cuts, they'll just disappear. Well, there is quite a worrying side to this as well, because it says that if growth comes at just 0.5% lower than the OBR forecast, and the Bank of England thinks it will, then that scale of cuts increases by another £30 billion a year. Well, they just can't do that to us, surely. With the way the economy is at the moment, why are they gambling on people's lives, it seems, doesn't it, with potentially cutting public services, which could be the police or the ambulance or whatever, when they should really be, if anything, putting measures in place to make sure those vital services aren't cut. Fire services as well. Maybe, who knows, the MPs could even be in a situation where they might have to dip into their own pockets. So, to be honest with you, I think we've got more chance of pigs flying than that ever happening, eh? Hoping for the best is not a strategy, says Mr. Johnson, and that is not Boris, that is Paul Johnson, remember, the director of the IFS. The key question to ask for those seeking our votes on July the 4th is how they would respond to such economic views. And the IFS says that the next government faces a trilemma, not a dilemma, but a trilemma. Raise taxes by more than that set out in the manifesto, cut spending or borrow more, so we can only guess at what parties would do. Labour and the Tories, though, they have already ruled out increases in three big taxes: income tax, national insurance and, of course, VAT, which, to be honest, I can't remember anyone ever said they were going to put up anyway. So it seems a bit of a wasted pledge, doesn't it? Are they trying to create some sort of Project Fear that if you don't vote for us, the other party will increase VAT? Well, of course, it hasn't increased since the EU put it up to 20% from the good old-fashioned 17.5%. So actually thinking about it, that should really go back down to 17.5% now that we're left the EU, surely, eh? It just makes me wonder what other nonsensical pledges they're going to put out. Oh, maybe how about we'll give you free air? Because let's face it, both the rate of VAT and the price of air are hardly going to change, are they, eh? Apparently, though, these taxes, they do raise just over 60% of revenues. The IFS, though, they seem to be giving Labour a helping hand here because they say, in theory, there is room to raise tax elsewhere, but it's hard to get anything substantial by hiking inheritance tax or capital gains, both of which I think, if anything, they need to cut. Why should we have to pay those taxes any more than what we do already? It's just an outrage, isn't it? Especially, let's face it, in the middle of a cost of living crisis. And going back to those cuts in public services, just think how much worse they'll actually be if more and more people come over here illegally from the safe country of France. I mean, I know, let's face it, Labour, they just seem to be quite slack about the whole situation, in my opinion. But by saying that, we'll go after the gangs, and whilst that is alright, them saying that, there'll just be another gang spring up, because no doubt, of course, these gangs do make quite a lot of money. So if one gang goes, another one will come and go, oh, I'll take their place. Pay me this and you can go over. Well, that's my opinion anyway. They've also been a bit kind to Labour because they say that Labour's manifesto is a series of policies aimed at raising growth, which the IFS judges to be sensible. Didn't judge that with this trust, did they, I'm guessing? Although it warns they will take time and have an impact, and planning reform will be technically difficult and politically painful. Well, that sounds like the most perfect description of Sir Keir Starmer, doesn't it? Technically difficult and politically painful, eh?